So hi, I'm Áine O'Hara. I'm a theatre maker and visual artist, and I also work in design for theatre as well. And I was meant to present my show GAA MAAD, which is written by myself and Vicky Curtis at Galway Theatre Festival this year, but pandemic.
Yeah, indeed. Well, thanks very much for joining me on this Zoom. I went to see GAA MAAD in the Fringe, and I was showing you that I've kept my Up the Dubs flag, which I'm very proud of. Yes. And we'll wave it around, even though there probably won't be any matches to go to. But sure, look it. So tell me a little bit about GAA MAAD.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit heartbroken seeing the tiny flag. So it is a piece of documentary theatre about myself and Vicky's experiences as queer people engaging with the GAA and being huge GAA fans. And it kind of looks at like the history of GAA in Ireland and the history of queer representation within the GAA, both like, you know, players, referees, and then in the wider organization and the kind of work that they do to sort of encourage members of the queer community to play and be out, or, you know,
yeah, great. And it's good fun. Like, it's a great it's a bit of a romp through history, you know, like it's great crack. And I particularly remember it because it was on in September, just the week of the final, which it was amazing, you know, to one day to be going to a play about GAA and then the next day to be sitting in the pub watching the match. Of course, the match of all matches, as a dub, I was delighted. So it was really good timing, I think, for Fringe.
Yeah, it was great. So like, I'm from Mayo and Vicky is from Dublin, and a huge part of the show is that kind of rivalry and, like, you know, we're pals, you know, despite this big historical rivalry. But like, all in all, it's kind of about celebration of this sort of fandom and you know, the passion and stuff that goes into it. So like, we were watching, there was one of the matches on, was it the final? I think it might have been the
final. Would have been around that time. Yeah.
On one of, because we had a ton of shows. We had like 14 shows or something, and the final was on, and it was on like before we had a matinee, and like I was like watching in the dressing room on the phone, and like Vicky was like, oh no, I don't want to watch it, because, you know, we were trying to like be able to perform after this huge thing, and like I watched it, which is probably a bad idea, and my probably affected that day, so sorry if you saw the show that day, but yeah, like, oh, it was just, I think it was the perfect time to have it. It was just luck because Fringe is in September, but like all of that, you know, we were hyped up, we were extra hyped up, like we are every September, just, you know, like watching all the matches and trying to see what would happen. Yeah, it was just like perfect timing to have the show.
Yeah, and what did you find, like, in terms of audience reception? Where was it particularly theatre people who weren't really sporty, or was it sporty people who, like, did you bring in that kind of?
It was actually like a lovely like mixture of people. So there was like loads of people that say were my friends purely from theatre, or Vicky's friends, you know, and they came to support us, and then at the end we're kind of like, oh, you know, this is actually really interesting, like, this is, you know, a huge part of our heritage, and maybe I will watch a match. Or with especially with like some queer people kind of might have felt alienated from the sport at a young age, or like felt like it wasn't for them. And we had one person come up to us afterwards to sort of say, you know, I didn't feel like this was for me as a child, but kind of seeing you guys talk about it like this, I'm gonna, you know, I might watch a match now. Like, I think that it could be for me. And then we had like people coming purely because they were like, oh, GAA, I love GAA, I'll go. And then kind of turned up and were introduced to theatre that way, and introduced to like our queer identities, I suppose, as well. And it's such a huge kind of party that I think that if you're coming to it for the first time, like a first time theatre goer or something, it's not entirely like a traditional theatre show. So I think some people were like surprised in a good way to kind of have something that was more interactive as their first like step into theatre, step into the arts.
Yeah, and it is like a party. Like I do remember absolutely laughing out loud at some parts, because it's very clever and it's very witty, but it's also it's just great fun. What was the research process like? Obviously, you know, some of it is based on your own experiences, but you do bring in historical elements and kind of look at the history of queer people and women's participation in GAA.
I suppose it started off. I was working with Vicky on another show, like as a stage manager, and it being Fringe, it was September, and we were like in the pub, and you know the match was on, and we were talking about how we didn't really see ourselves, or you know, we kind of both figured out that we were both huge fans, and we were like, you know, surprised.
Yeah.
And then we were like, why are we surprised? And you know, what about me or Vicky says that we wouldn't be huge fans? And then we started to have a conversation about like women in the GAA, women's representation, and also queer people's representation, both as like fans and spectators, and then within the game itself, and also in like leadership positions within the organization. We were like, you know, why isn't this there? And started to like read more about it, and kind of, you know, actually delve into it, because we both would you know a good amount about like the last 20 years, but we didn't necessarily know the entire history. So after that, we kind of went into a research process where we looked at it from the very beginning, and kind of read like a ton of books. And also I'm like a huge nerd now about like history. Yeah. And I think that I definitely annoyed Vicky and our director Neve a couple of times, just being like, what about this cool fact? Because there's only so many facts you can put in a show.
Yeah.
But I suppose, and we spoke to different people that were involved, queer people that were involved within the GAA, and the GAA are actually doing a huge kind of, I don't know, project. I don't know what the right word is, but they're working with Transgender Equality Network Ireland to kind of develop a policy for specifically for trans people within the GAA, from like a very local level to like a more official, or like the bigger teams sort of level. So we spoke to lots of different people. We spoke to like players, we spoke to referees and members of the organization. It was a huge research process, I suppose, is the answer.
Yeah, but and I'd say there's loads of stuff now that's floating around in your head that you'll always have as these kind of fun facts that has come out of all of that.
I'm great at parties.
But it's an important part of our culture, and a huge part of our history and where we are now. And I think it's really important that, you know, projects like that are bringing particularly marginalized members of society into, and really making it not just kind of that people are, I suppose, accepted without it necessarily being verbalized, but having policies and verbal public action is really important. Yeah, so that's great.
Like it makes a huge difference for people, because there's personal stories in the show, and like I talk about myself, especially as a person, like a queer person from a rural community, and kind of that I didn't see myself anywhere. And that like the GAA was a huge part of my life, but I didn't see myself in that either. And now kind of with the organization taking the initiative, and like so like they marched in Pride last year, kind of I can imagine that being, if I was like, you know, a young person now, I can imagine that it would be kind of, you know, heartening to see that support, to see it out there. And like, you know, there's lots of problems with Pride, but like it was incredible to see the GAA represented there, and like to see, you know, to see them opening up and taking the initiative, and not just doing it like as an afterthought. Because you see like a lot in sports where, you know, something awful happens, and like a player is treated in a really bad way, and then the organization says, okay, we
react. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that kind of proactive kind of movement by the GAA was really incredible, and I think will actually make a difference to people around the country.
And I think that's a big point, actually, because it is a national organization, and it's one of the kind of national organizations that really gets into the heart of rural communities where queer people feel often much more isolated. So yeah, I just, the whole thing, I found it really exciting, and we were really excited to bring it to Galway. I think it would have gone down an absolute treat, even though it was a Dub and a Mayo supporter. But look at,
I get it.
you know, it's applicable to everybody.
Yeah.
So you're currently working on you have two residencies, one ongoing and one upcoming, that is particularly all around disability and the arts. Can you tell me a little bit about those, please?
So I've been working with, first of all, A4 Sounds in Dublin for the last, since January. And they had kind of given me support to work towards an exhibition of work on this subject. So I have fibromyalgia, which is it's a huge condition. There's many different symptoms, but broadly I have chronic pain, and my immune system is pretty shit, and I get lots and lots of different infections, and can be bedbound for long periods of time and stuff. And I had because of that, had been reading more and more about productivity and about healthcare, and about treating, about systems of healthcare that work in across the world, because I was kind of desperate and I was looking for an answer, and found myself reading a lot about care itself, and why that word is used in the phrase healthcare at all, and if there's any actual care within those structures, especially in Ireland, and if that is a priority, or if it has been lost, I suppose. So again, because I'm mad into history for some reason, I don't know, I just apparently am. I've been doing lots and lots of research about the history of healthcare, especially in Ireland, and how kind of the system came to be sort of so, I don't know, not great. And no, not to say anything bad about people who are working really hard, and there's some amazing physicians and doctors and stuff, but the system is really broken.
The system isn't user friendly, or
it's not good for doctors, for nurses, for patients. It's not good for anyone. It's just kind of, it's not working. So I suppose I've been doing a lot of research on that, and have kind of come up with this large scale performative event, I suppose. I don't know what to call it. Where which will be taking place in A4 Sounds in September.
Great.
I think that I've been lucky in that this kind of medical setting leans in really well into things like appointments and social distancing, and we can schedule things as part of the performance, rather than there won't be a huge audience. It'll be kind of one-on-one performances with me, so it should be able to go ahead. But if not, we have an online backup plan.
Great.
But that will be happening in September, which is I mean, that's a load of ideas. I don't want to spoil the
of course
event. So that's happening in September, and then I've been awarded the Access Playground bursary, which is a bursary run by Access Ballymun for performers or theatre makers with disabilities, and I'm working on creating a script, a play, a question mark,
an experience,
writing something, yes, an experience, kind of further delving into those subjects, and that I've been researching for the last few months. So yeah, I've got an exciting few months. Really unbelievably glad to have the support of those two organizations, because they've kind of kept me going in this weird time.
Yeah, and it is it's kind of fascinating in a way, the timing of it. I find it amazing the amount of people who I've spoken to who started projects before coronavirus, and then all of a sudden they make twice as much sense. Do you know that the timing has just because productivity and like your physical body being able or not able to do something is something that we like a lot of people have come up against in a way that they'd never thought they would before. And obviously it's a massive problem in the way the arts are structured for people with disabilities of all kinds, whether it's physical access to these old buildings, to rehearsal space or whatever, but also how we're all kind of, so many of us are freelancers, we're kind of living project to project, and if you are bedbound for a series of weeks, the project goes on ahead or it doesn't, and there's a huge problem there with how we relate kind of productivity and human value and, you know, worth and all of those things together, as well as how the industry is set up in such a way to make it additionally difficult. It's hard enough already.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, for people that are, you know, that don't have any chronic illness, like, it's incredibly difficult to work in the arts. Like, there's no security. You don't know what you're going to do next month. You definitely don't know what you're going to do next year, and don't even start thinking about like when you're 60. Like, that's just, if you start thinking about that, you'll just freak out.
Yeah.
So like it's a problem within the industry as a whole, first off, that we aren't looking after each other, because like, I love the arts and I love work and I love theatre, and I, just as much as anyone else, you know, want to see shows happen, but that shouldn't, like, as much as we care about shows and having them happen, that shouldn't be like the most important thing. Like, the most important thing should be like that we're all okay, and that, you know, we've all had some sleep and some food and like half an hour off. Like, there's like, you know, there's very basic things that we're lacking, and it's kind of, this pressure is like system wide, where we're, you know, we want to be seen as people that you want to hire, so we work harder. And you know, we want to see people like, oh, you know, like, she works really hard, she worked through lunch, like, fair play to her, like, she stayed up all last night, you know, rewriting this thing or whatever. But we need to like take a look at that, and like, obviously that comes from the top, and because we need more money to be able to do that, like, because time is a luxury, you know, and sleep is a luxury, and you know, we obviously need a huge amount of funding to be able to like pay ourselves minimum wage and have holidays and stuff, and then you like look at access, like, you know, like, it's, yes, I have strong feelings.
It's something that I've found, even to like the very, like, kind of what I think is the base level of, can people with disabilities get into this room or get into this building? And like in Galway, it's something that we struggle with a lot, because some of the venues, yes, the venue itself, the auditorium is accessible, but the rehearsal room might not be. Or in some cases, the space might be, but they don't have accessible bathrooms. Or, you know, we do a festival club in various pubs around the city, and I love the pubs in Galway, but they're not, a lot of them are not accessible.
Galway stresses me out. I love it, but it hurts to walk around the city. Like, I think that we need to make it a priority. Like, it needs to be budgeted for in the application, and it needs to be budgeted for in everyone's application, so that the Arts Council sees it over and over again, and you like are repeatedly like, this is really necessary, but it costs a lot, you know. It should be talked about at the very beginning, and obviously there are different levels for, like, you know, there are certain festivals and companies that really don't have any money for anything, but like, there are ways to look at accessibility, and even giving everyone the information really clearly on your website is like, you know, really important and free. Like, because, you know, I'll be looking at something, a really cool show will come out, and I'll be like, oh yeah, it's in, you know, what venue is that? I'm not sure about that venue. Especially if it's, especially now things are happening like more in site specific places, or like in like large spaces that maybe your people aren't used to, and you just want like a list that says,
well, not
you know, is like, you know, there's 2 steps into this building. The bathroom is accessible, but it's up, you know, it's on, you have to walk a ramp that is like 3 meters long. We will be going to a pub afterwards. This is the situation. Like, you just want details. You know, like,
it drives me mad when you go into a place that has an accessible bathroom, but it's up three steps or something. Like, why make the bathroom accessible?
Or the best one is when they turn it into like a kind of cupboards, and there's like the buckets and stuff in it, and you're just like,
mops and storage of extra chairs, and
space is there for a reason.
There's a few places, like, I find it now, I find myself noticing like where an accessible bathroom is an accessible bathroom and not an additional space that they were like, oh feck, we better turn this into an accessible bathroom. And it makes a big difference in my opinion of the people who are running the whatever it is, venue, restaurant, building, you know, because there's an extra element of kind of recognition and care. And I have to say as well that I think the other thing that organizations and venues need is there needs to be a way for us all to be educated without the onus being on the people with disabilities who are struggling to get access in the first place. Do you know?
I mean, anything that I know, like, as much as I experience things myself, like anything that I know about accessibility is from reading about it in my own time at home. And like, you know, especially if you're in an organization that is like, say, funded year round, and you're like working like a certain amount of hours. I think that it's like totally fair to ask, you know, whoever's in charge, that a certain number of those hours be put into that kind of research. Because it's a lot. You have to read a lot. You have to find out a lot of information, and it is out there. Like, we have huge, like, the internet is class. So like, it's possible to find out all of these things yourself, without necessarily experiencing them or whatever. But like, you need the time, and you need to be paid for the time. When we come back to like
we come back to the same. And then I think the other thing that is so interesting about your A4 Sounds residency is that you are looking at productivity, because across the world, really, we have a problem with productivity guilt. Like, I took 2 weeks off there, and I've been working non-stop all year, took 2 weeks off, and the first 3 days I couldn't not read my emails. And eventually I got into the point where I was like, no, I'm going to delete the email app so I can't, even if I wanted to. But it takes, it's so ingrained in us that work, and the more work you do, the better, you know. And like that, I've been up all night doing X, or, you know, I got 3 hours sleep last night because I couldn't stop thinking about that budget, or that event, or that health and safety plan, or whatever it is. And that's not right.
No.
For anybody.
No. Like, it's not just the arts industry.
No.
Like,
it's
kind of, it's become our ethos. It's like slowly happened over time, where like workers' rights have been like eroded and eroded and eroded, and we've become these beings that just have to work all the time, and a lot of it comes from like financial insecurity, and like especially if you're freelance, you don't know what you're going to be doing, and you need to, you know, it's like this vicious cycle. So like, we need some workers' rights for freelancers. You know, like, we need this kind of change to come from the top, because like, as much as we can look after each other in production meetings and encourage each other to take time off, if we know that if we do those things, we won't be financially stable, then
like, if you take a choice between taking a couple of days off and being able to pay your rent that month, there's no actual choice there.
No.
And I think it's been really interesting to see the impact of the National Campaign for the Arts on the pandemic unemployment payment, and like the social welfare system struggles with the concept of artist and freelancer, and like it is so alien to them that the systems aren't put in place for any of us who might need to actually access those. And you know, if we are all working freelance or whatever, everyone's paying their taxes. That's what they're for. It's for when you don't have work. The taxes you have paid have gone to support.
Yeah, it's like there's a
welfare
gap in the knowledge, like especially within the social welfare system. Like those poor people that you go in to meet don't have any idea, because no one has ever told them that like this is a type of work, you know, that this is legitimate. So then they don't know where to put you, where to send you, how it works. And like every single like, you know, loan officer is like trying to make it up and ring up and find out the information. The information should already be there, like from
and I mean that everybody's getting different kind of versions of what they can and can't access. And I think that's one of the things, well, personally, my kind of the rock I will die on, or whatever that phrase is just a basic income for everybody, universal basic income.
I
think that would in so many ways change the world, because it would provide people with the scope to breathe. And then when you can breathe, you can be the best version of yourself.
Because imagine
productively and humanly and kindness and everything, art would flourish. Access to art for everybody would be completely different. I'm convinced that it's what we need, you know.
It's true, because if we had that, right, we could actually take the time to look after ourselves. Like it's really basic. You know, we could actually take a lunch break. Wild.
I know, imagine. And like, you know, not work at midnight, or
not feel like the pressure to respond to that email, because you're like, you know, I'm doing my job, I'm doing well, and if I do lose this job, I won't be kicked out. You know, I will have somewhere to live. Like, so.
And I think it actually changed our relationship with work as well, because, you know, I think some of the arguments against a universal social income is, oh, well, then people won't do the jobs that, you know, people need purpose and meaning, but the ways of accessing that would change. And so people would be going to work because they want to, and everybody would just be nicer. I
know that all of us would keep going, because we keep going in like ridiculous.
We keep going anyway
already. So like,
and I think we've really seen that in the past however many months it's been. I was going to say 4, but it's definitely been more than that. 6. Yeah. That like artists just jumped forward to give, and the generosity was amazing. But it also made me really sad, because the generosity was there, but the balance, the value that other people, the audiences and everybody were putting on it wasn't there.
I
think that's what we need to work on, asking for value.
Because it's all well and good to be like promoting Ireland as this amazing, you know, land of scholars or whatever, but we need the support.
Exactly.
Yes, we are class, but also
we can only stay class if you help us, please.
We can only stay class and or like stay in Ireland if you actually help, please.
So it'll be
our campaign for UBI.
Look, between the two of us, we've got it sorted. It'll be grand. This has been lovely. I've enjoyed chatting to you a lot. I'm looking forward to the A4 Sounds exhibition event experience.
I mean, there'll definitely be options to view it online anyway, for anyone that's like not in Dublin or has to stay home. So
great, brilliant. And congratulations again on the Access Ballymun. They've been doing great work this pandemic.
They're doing so many things. I'm overwhelmed.
It's fantastic. So lots of good things coming from Áine O'Hara, and hopefully we might get to see GAA MAAD. Where's my flag gone?
I just want to talk about GAA, please. I'm desperate for some like
Well,
game
we
football.
might get games before Christmas. Wasn't that the plan, that it would, the championship would wrap up before Christmas, which would be both bizarre and potentially amazing as an experience.
This would be typical. This would be a typical year for Mayo to win because nobody would be able to go. Such a classic Mayo thing.
The Dubs. Up the Dubs.
Fine. Yeah, 6 in a row, whatever. It's fine.
Look, we're going to give it our best shot. Pandemic or no pandemic.
Yeah, the pandemic can't hold the Dubs down.
No, absolutely not. Right, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for chatting with me, and we'll hopefully see some of your work soon.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.